Nobody had the authority to make legal decisions for Cindy because she didn't think anything was going to happen to her at 54 years old. She thought she had time, which she did not. She was actually unconscious until the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, and the kids were in the hospital, the daughters, not the son, in the room with her. The son was feeling so guilty because he hadn't talked to her for 2 years and was thinking that, maybe that wasn't the right approach to that argument they'd had. But on Wednesday afternoon, she sat up in the bed and said, "I love you," and she laid down and died. I guess this is not all that uncommon for people that have had strokes and been unconscious for a while. There's not a lot of advance notice about a stroke. Cindy was very healthy, didn't have high blood pressure, didn't have any medical problems, but just all of a sudden had a stroke. And I actually see that quite a bit in my practice in dealing with so many different families. I have become very familiar with a lot of different medical situations. But in this case, the house was in Cindy's name. The boyfriend was just living there. Now, you've got 3 kids that are in their early 20s that within 24 hours after mom dies have to plan a funeral. I don't know about you, but I have had to plan a funeral, and casket shopping was probably the worst part of it for me. Just going in there and listening to someone while I'm in shock talk about the difference between caskets was overwhelming. But they had to do that. They also had to figure out, now what are they doing with mom's house? Are they kicking the boyfriend out? What do they do with mom's car? How are they going to pay the bills? These kids are in their early 20s. They're trying to get themselves through the week and pay their own bills. Well, the house had to go through probate court. Has anybody been through probate court? No? Well, you're all very lucky and you want to avoid it. It takes 6 to 9 months to get through that process. During that time, you can't use assets from the estate, so somebody has to pay the mortgage, utilities, taxes, and insurance. Every neighborhood that I have ever lived in has had a house, and maybe you've had one too, that was empty. And nobody lives there for a long time. Some nice neighbors taking care of the yard. And I always wondered, what is going on with that house? Why are they not selling the house or letting somebody live in there, renting it, something? Well, it's in probate court. And many times, once it starts down that path, like I said, it's at least 6 to 9 months. Then it goes into foreclosure because most of us can't afford to pay for another full household. And so this was the type of thing that Cindy's children had to deal with when they were 20 years old. Today I'm going to ask you to think about the priorities of your life. And my idea here is that all of us have things that are a priority to us, but we don't necessarily remember them every day. And so I wanted to take a minute, have you guys step back and say, what's really important to you? And then I want to talk about real life. Things that I guess probably a lot of you see. I see badges and different things. You're out there in the real life every day, so you probably see a lot of this stuff. I find that we've helped over 3,000 families. And I find that a lot of families and a lot of us people think, well, that's never going to happen to me. I look at Cindy and say, oh my gosh, who would have thought at 54? My brother passed away at 56. He never thought that was going to happen to him. We all think like Cindy was unfortunate, that was just a bad thing that happened to that person, kind of a fluke that's not going to happen to any of us. But it does happen to us, so I want you to know that. And then I want to talk to you about legal tools that everybody over 18 needs to have in place so that you know what you need and how you can avoid some of the terror that people go through. Then I'm going to talk to you about how to create a secure future so we can protect that nest egg that you've been working on. This is for somebody that has people in their life that they love. If you don't have anybody in your life that you love, you probably better leave right now because you could use your time better. This is focused on that. This is focused on people that have a nest egg. If you've been saving a little bit throughout your life and now you have some money, you were saving that for a reason because you wanted a better life at some point or you wanted to give it to your children. You had something you want to do with that. So let's figure out how to protect it. But if you have one of those, you're going to want to listen to what I'm saying today. If you want to be known as somebody that really took care of your family, this is a good place for you to be. And finally, if you don't want to leave a disaster, a lot of us leave a disaster, not intentionally, but it's because we don't know. And that's why I do a lot of this education, because I want you to know some things that you could do to avoid them. Something happens and now you go hire a lawyer. This part of law is not that way. Estate planning, elder law, whatever you want to call it, you're still going to die, whether you get a lawyer or not. It's just going to happen. And there's a couple different ways that your family can deal with what's going to be the aftermath of this. One is the easy, simple, less expensive way, and that's when you plan in advance. So nothing necessarily is going to happen, but you need to take some action. Because that's the one thing we all know is that we are going to die. Although I have had people argue with me about that before and think they are not. They are. So you can do that the easy way, or you can do it the very expensive, gut-wrenching, hard way. That's what I want everyone here to avoid. Everybody has somebody in their life that is suffering from dementia. If you get dementia, you don't have capacity to sign these things once you get to a certain point. And that point comes about pretty abruptly. You don't know, it could be 5 years, it could be 5 months. But once it's there, it's too late. So again, let's just get this stuff together. Let's have it. It's going to last you for a long time. And you can avoid a lot of really difficult times. You should have a will if you want to decide who your stuff is going to go to. If you want the state to decide that, that's great. They will. You won't agree with it, but they will. And then if you own real estate, I recommend that you get a trust. So let's talk about a trust a little bit. A trust is a legal document. A revocable living trust becomes effective immediately. I would recommend the only thing you need to put into that trust is your real estate. So it's like a legal wrapper around your real estate. You're still going to get your homestead exemption. You're still going to get the school tax exemption if you're old like I am. You're still going to be able to pay all of your taxes and insurance. You still pay your maintenance and your mortgage and all of those things. Your house does not have to be paid off to put it into a trust. You live in your house exactly the same way that you do today. You can sell it if you'd like, and you can buy another house. The difference is you avoid probate court. That is the big advantage. So what is it really about probate court? Well, I talked about how it takes a long time, but now it's the scammers that they find out who just got a windfall, and they're all on top of them trying to get money from them. 3 roles for the trust. One is the trustee, and that's the manager of the trust. You could be the manager of your trust as long as you have capacity. But you have a backup in case you ever lose capacity. This person can take over. There's a grantor. The grantor is the person that owned the house before it went into the trust. They still own the house. It's just being managed by the trustee. And then there's the beneficiary. Well, while we're alive, we're the beneficiary of the trust. So we could be all 3 of these roles, but we've got somebody that backs us up and is able to step in if we become incapacitated and when we die. So I want you to understand how the trust works. It's not something that you have to be a millionaire for. A lot of people have heard of trusts and think, well, those are just for rich people. Rich people have been using them for a long time, but they're really best for us people that are middle class. We've saved something, we've got a little bit, and we don't want to spend it. The other thing about probate court is everybody else gets paid before your family. So when it goes through probate court, you have to pay the last hospital bills. You've got to pay all of the funeral expenses, and then any debts that that person had, and then you're going to pay the lawyer. All of these things come out before your loved ones get the money. And of course, taxes. You've got to have taxes in there. So we don't want everybody else to get paid before the people that you're trying to protect and take care of get paid. We want them to get everything that you've been saving, right? So we talked about it being expensive, a public record, things can be tied up for a long time, and somebody's got to pay the bills while it's in probate. So again, this is not just for millionaires. Everybody can do this. If you have anything that you want to avoid probate court, like real estate, then you should have a trust. Everything else that you own, I can make jump over probate court and go right to your family. You find somebody that's going to draft it. It's a legal entity. It's not anything physical. It does have its own tax ID number, or in some cases it can use yours. But I want you to know they're not all created equal. All legal documents are based on who wrote them. It's not like there's just one form and we put your name in that. They all have different provisions and things in there. So you want to make sure that whoever you're using is somebody that knows about this. We have a term that we call a door attorney. And a door attorney is somebody that takes whatever case walks in their door. Because they got to do it to keep their lights on and to keep things going. So they don't have to be an expert in it, but they're going to figure it out for you, right? One other part is if you have a blended family. One of the challenges of a blended family, and I'm in a blended family, Randy has 2 kids, I have 2, so we're together as 6. If I pass away, I don't ever want my kids to be cut out. So Randy and I have been together 25 years, but I don't think he would cut them out, but I see where, okay, and maybe I'm the one that cuts his kids out. Maybe what happens is he passes away, and I'm going about my life with the intention that everything's going to be split between 4 of them, whatever I pass, but somewhere over the next 20 years, they stop talking to me, I don't see them, I don't know, we have a falling out or something, I change my will, and they're out of the will, right? It can happen very easily. But with the trust, it can't happen. So the trust becomes irrevocable whenever one of us dies. And you can't change who's inheriting after that point. So the kids can't ever get left out, or whoever you want to inherit from you. So that's another advantage I want you to know about. But it's a way to keep things out of probate court, keep them private, make the things happen fast. As soon as your family gets a death certificate, they can get right to your assets. When we do a trust for somebody, it's not uncommon for them to go home and they'll be talking to their neighbor and say, well, you know, I got trust them. And their neighbor will be like, yeah, I got trust too. And like, well, I just went down to the county office and refiled my homestead exemption. Did you do that? They'll be like, well, no, I don't get the homestead exemption now that I have the trust. And our client's like, well, I get the homestead exemption. Why don't you get the homestead exemption? Because their trust wasn't written that way. So you don't always get everything. And then their neighbor will be calling us up saying, can you add in my homestead exemption to my trust? Well, I can't. It's all part together. It'll be like, I used the example the other day. If I have a tricycle, I can't really make that into a 4-wheeler very easily, right? I can't even make it into a two-wheeler very easily. So it's a combination of everything. And these are just some of the things that we put as protections in our trust. If somebody, maybe a child or a grandchild that's underage, is going to inherit from you, I don't like anybody under 25 to get a chunk of money. They always get in trouble. If somebody has some debt, which is not hard to get these days, especially if you get sick, we can hold their inheritance till they get that cleaned up, because we want them to have an advantage of your life savings. If they're in the middle of a divorce, we don't want them to get their inheritance until they get divorced, so they don't have to give part of it away. The homestead exemption, there's this thing, and I'm not an IRS tax guru, but I do know there's this one exemption called a 121 exclusion. If you live in your house for 2 years, and then you sell it, and you're lucky enough to make $250,000 per owner, so if it's with your spouse, that's make $500,000 of profit on your house, you don't have to pay any taxes on that $500,000. We include that so you still have that even though your house is in a trust. Very important if you're going to make a lot of money on your house. I could only be so lucky, right? So every person has a different situation. Everybody has different family members. A lot of them play similar roles, I'll just tell you, but we all have different ones. We have different finances, we have different things going on in our life, different medical situations. So I can't tell you, what does this cost? That's usually what people say to me. What does this cost? I can't tell you. I'm going to tell you it's going to be a few $1,000s. I don't know exactly how much though, because it's going to depend on your situation. But because I can't tell you, we do offer a complimentary consultation. You can come in, talk to a member of our legal team for free. They'll go through and talk with you, get to know you, and then they'll be able to tell you what we could do for you. We'll decide if we want to work together and what that will cost. It's a flat rate. It doesn't keep going by the hour. But whether you do this with me or somebody else, I mean, I would love for you to do it with me, but that's not why I'm here. I want you to do this. This is going to make a difference in the lives of everybody around you. This is not a DIY project. There's a lot of information out there on the internet, and I'll tell you, most of it is not right. So, you don't want to look for a bargain for parachutes, scuba diving, or estate plans. You can't imagine what your family will go through if you have not done this. So, thank you very much for showing up today. If I can answer any questions, let me know, and I appreciate your feedback.